presence of my staff, at a restaurant, Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden.
That was a pivotal moment in today's hearing. Testimony about a previously unrevealed phone call where, according to the witness, the President of the United States specifically asked about investigations in Ukraine. Welcome to Full Circle, everyone. I'm Randy Kay, and for Anderson, it was a historic day in Washington with the first public hearing in the impeachment inquiry. Today's hearing lasted nearly 6 hours, and it certainly left us and you with a whole lot of questions. We asked you to comment with your questions on the Full Circle Facebook page, and comment you did. Joining me to answer them is Ross Garber, who teaches about impeachment law and political investigations at Tulane Law School. He's also a CNN legal analyst and defense attorney. Great to see you, Ross. Okay, you ready for these questions?
I'm ready.
All right, so before we jump into some of the deeper questions, what is the actual impeachable offense under consideration? Is it abuse of power, bribery, quid pro quo? We hear a lot about all of those.
Yeah, so we're not sure yet. I mean, and to be clear, under the Constitution, the standard for impeachment is treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. That last part in particular, other high crimes and misdemeanors, there's no sort of statutory definition for it. It can mean a lot of things. So right now, I think what's happening is the House is taking testimony. They're going to consider the facts, and then if we get there, then there will be articles of impeachment, and those will define what the potentially impeachable offenses are.
Okay, so they're still trying to figure it out, it sounds like. The Democrats called the witnesses today. We saw 2 witnesses today. Do the Republicans now get to call witnesses at some point?
Well, the Republicans could submit a list of potential witnesses, which they have, and Democrats have agreed to call, I think, 2 or 3 off of that list, but so far haven't given an answer on the others, and it's unlikely that that the other Republican witnesses will be called. Those include Hunter Biden, the former vice president's son. It is vanishingly unlikely that the House Democrats agree to call Hunter Biden.
Okay. Catherine wants to know, is obstructing people from testifying an impeachable offense?
It's a great question. So, and here's the deal on that. In the Nixon impeachment, there was actually an article of impeachment drafted and passed through the House Judiciary Committee, charging the president with an impeachable offense of obstructing a congressional investigation. Now, the president resigned. President Nixon resigned before the full House could vote on that. In the Clinton impeachment, and remember, there are so few impeachments in our country's history. In the Clinton impeachment, there was also an article of impeachment drafted out of the House Judiciary Committee based on obstruction of Congress. Now, that article was not adopted by the full House. So it's uncertain what could happen here. It seems that the House Democrats, and in particular Chairman Schiff, they're considering an article of impeachment for obstructing Congress. We'll see if that gets out of committee and if it goes to the full House and if it gets out of the full House. But it's definitely being contemplated.
Catherine has another question for you. She wants to know, can the members request only yes or no answers by the witnesses when asked a question without clarification from the witness, as this is not a trial?
Yeah, so you'll see in the testimony, they try to do that all the time. And generally, the witnesses are permitted to not just answer with yes or no. And when I've represented witnesses before Congress and other legislative bodies, generally my advice is you don't have to answer yes or no, even if that's what the question is. You're allowed to explain, and you'll see that dynamic playing out. The questioner can try to get a yes or no, but the witness has some leeway.
So in terms of the process, if the House does impeach the president, it then goes to the Senate for a trial. Who presides over the Senate trial?
So under the Constitution, when it's the president who's being impeached and tried, it's the Chief Justice of the United States who presides over the Senate trial. Now, the big question there is, what does that even mean? What does it mean to preside? The Constitution says preside. but it hasn't been in the past interpreted the way we might think of a judge presiding over a trial.
And we're talking about John Roberts here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Generally, in the past, and again, there have only been 2 impeachment trials of presidents in our history. The chief justices have sort of taken a back seat, haven't taken on very substantive roles, and have allowed the senators to control the proceedings.
Okay. So here's another question from Bruce, which is pretty interesting. Can the president be forced to appear at an impeachment trial in the Senate to be interrogated if he is impeached in the House, obviously?
Yeah, a lot of great questions. The answer is nobody knows. It's never happened before. The executive branch, the president and the Justice Department have taken the position that the president and his senior advisors are absolutely immune from being compelled to testify before Congress. Absolutely immune. Now, no court has endorsed that proposition. So the short answer is we don't know. But here it's very unlikely because remember, the Republicans control the Senate. So it's unlikely that the Republicans would try to force the president to come and testify.
Right. Would it help him or hurt him if he did or didn't, do you think?
If you asked him, he'd probably say he'd be a great witness and he'd love to show up and testify. I think many lawyers would probably advise him not to do that.
Right.
But he might do something interesting, like kind of split the difference and make a statement to the Senate or make a statement by video to the Senate. The Senate has wide latitude in determining how it's going to get information and what kind of information it's going to get.
This question is from Dave. If Trump is impeached and removed, and Mike Pence becomes president, because it would then go to the vice president, how is a new vice president selected? Yeah,
so the answer is I'm actually not entirely sure, to be honest. The way it's worked in the past is in the one time there was a vacancy in the vice presidency involving Spiro Agnew in the Nixon administration, Gerald Ford became the vice president. Became the vice president, and then he took over for the president.
Right, and then he chose Nelson Rockefeller as his vice president, and which the House and the Senate has to approve. That's my understanding.
Indeed, yes.
Okay, so they can kind of pick whoever they want, but at least as long as they're approved by the House and Senate, it seems.
Right.
So here's a question from William. If the House impeaches and the Senate convicts the president, does he have any options to appeal or contest his removal from office?
Yeah, almost certainly not. There was a Supreme Court case a while back involving a judge who was impeached and removed, and he challenged the process in the Senate. He filed an action in court, and the Supreme Court ultimately said that the Senate has the sole power under the Constitution, the sole authority to conduct impeachment trials, and the Supreme Court was not going to review how the Senate came to its conclusion. So it's almost certain that there's no ability to appeal or review. The Senate's decision is going to be final.
Okay. Pat wants to know if Trump gets impeached but doesn't leave office, what will happen? I'm not sure if Pat means doesn't get removed from office or is refusing to leave office.
Yeah, my sense is probably the latter. There has been some concern about whether the president would respect a removal order. I hope we don't get there. I certainly hope we don't get there, and there's no sign that we would get there. That would be an awful situation. Right,
exactly. Okay, well, that was really interesting and really helpful in figuring all of this out. Ross Garber, thank you so much.
A lot of great questions. Happy to be here.
All right, thank you. Have a great day. All right, so let's move on to the goods, where I'll share one story that hopefully leaves you feeling good. An elementary school cafeteria worker in Georgia celebrated her 95th birthday in style with the people that she shares her love with every day, her students. Martha Strickland, known to the kids simply as Granny, spent her milestone birthday passing out cookies along with hugs to her young friends because spreading love has been a staple of her long life. Granny has been a shining star of the Shiloh Elementary School cafeteria for 28 years and has no plans of retiring her apron.
How could you be any happier? And why would you leave a place that you're so loved?
Granny proves age is just a number, much to the astonishment of her young admirers. When she started back in 1991, some of their parents weren't even born yet.
That's just insane to me, how long she's been living.
That's insane how long she's been living. That's hilarious. She worked in data processing in Atlanta for 30 years before walking through those cafeteria doors decades ago. Granny never looked back and says she considers the children at her school to be like family.
It's fantastic. I love them and they love me.
Happy birthday to a very cool granny who has sweetened up our day here on The Goods. That does it, everyone, for Full Circle. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And remember, you can stream the show anytime by going to cnn.com/Full Circle. Until then, tune into AC360 on CNN at 8 and 11 Eastern for Anderson's special coverage of the